Pause. Silence. Let's reconvene in person again, to reconnect, to tell our stories, to listen, to disarm ourselves of preconceived notions, to reframe, to reflect, to unplug. Welcome to #Unplugged22. Take a victory lap. High five a friend. This is your moment, our moment. Together, we unplug to connect again and remember why we started. Let's evaluate our community and our digital impact with quality conversations rooted in context. We're about real connections that translate into real-life action. Brought to you by Jamlab Africa and the Civic Tech Innovation Network.
I think we're just waiting. See, the room is filling up as well. We're just waiting for Abigail here, and I'm sure we'll start in a moment. Hi, Abigail.
Hello. Yes. Hi, Dirk. I'm
Lost
back
you there.
for a second. That was frightening. Welcome, everybody. I must have pressed something and it just suddenly kicked me out, but I'm back. Welcome
Thank
to
you.
Jamfest
That's how
2022.
collaboration starts.
Yeah, shaky. Welcome everyone who's joining this session. It's a live session and it's being recorded, so there's some information I'm going to share with you. This is a premier event organized by the Journalism and Media Lab, otherwise known as Jamlab Africa, which is a project of the Wits Centre for Journalism in Johannesburg, South Africa. Can you hear me? Dirk, is this good?
All good.
Lovely. I'll just carry on then while people are still joining us. Jamfest for 2022 is co-hosted alongside the Civic Tech Innovation Forum, which is where we are today. And we thank you for joining us from across the continent and the rest of the world for this year's festival under the banner Unplugged, but Still Connecting theme. So my name is Abigail Kemper, and I work as the Research and Engagement Lead at Open Cities Lab. And I'm looking forward to facilitating this session titled Collaboration, a buzzword or a strategy for meaningful impact. And join with me are panelists from the Africa Data Hub. Dirk is here at the moment. Blaise has just joined. That's wonderful. And Mwende has contacted me to say that she's joining as soon as possible. She just had some network issues to sort out. But yeah, we will be, our hope today is that you will leave this knowledge sharing discussion with a better understanding of how you might look to collaborate with us or others in your next project. I also have some housekeeping rules on the next slide to share with you. But I just wanted to say hi to Blaise. Good timing. Awesome. Have we got a sense of who's in the room? Lovely. We've got a whole group of people. Nice to see some OCL faces. And welcome to Harvey and Sarah and Stuart and Kwazi, who's helping us, and Alistair. Welcome, Alistair. Ella, Joe. Yeah, welcome everybody. So a little bit of housekeeping. I'd like to just let you know if you can share and tweet about today's conversation on social media using the hashtag Jamfest 2022 and Unplugged22. That would be great. We'd like for this discussion to be interactive, so please use the Q&A function and for any questions or comments, and you can direct it to our speakers too. This session is being recorded and will be publicly available on various digital platforms in different formats. So bear that in mind. Okay, let's continue the session. Has Mwende joined us? Not yet, but I'm sure she will. Okay. We don't have any presentation slides to share because I think the conversation is going to be rich enough. And yeah, I'd just like to kick it off with a little welcome again and an introduction to how we are all connected and what our role here as collaborators is. So we're all from different organizations. In fact, we're from different cities too. But we all work together on a project called Africa Data Hub. And our collective mission at ADH is to lower the barriers that African journalists face to access and use data in their storytelling, specifically around health and development. And we started with a very strong COVID-19 focus, but have expanded since then. So I'd like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves. You might have read their bios on the schedule or the advertising for this panel. But Dirk, can I ask you to go first? Can you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Dirk Meerkotter. I'm currently working as a full stack developer at OpenUp, and I have been involved in a few of the projects as part of Africa Data Hub, and I have enjoyed very much working as I find it is quite a diverse project with many avenues and much possibilities. So I've been enjoying that very much.
Thanks, Dirk. Blaise, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Blaise. I direct things at Orodata Science, UK and Nigeria. And of course, we're part of the collaborators at the Africa Data Hub initiative, and it's quite a great initiative because of the different elements, different people, and different way of doing things. So yeah, thank you.
Welcome, Blaise. It's great to have you join us. And when Mwende joins, I'll ask her to introduce herself. She's representing Orodata Dev, an organization that's also part of our collaboration. So we've titled today's discussion around collaboration. Is it a buzzword? And I'm interested to know from the panelists if you agree that it is a buzzword. Why is collaboration trending now more than it did 10 years ago, and what has changed? Dirk, you had some interesting thoughts. Do you want to share?
Well, yes, thank you, Abigail. I was actually thinking about this, about whether the question that was framed is whether it is a buzzword or a strategy for meaningful impact. And my first question was whether it is a buzzword. I mean, it's certainly some that word that we kind of use in our project that we're currently talking about now, which is the Africa Data Hub, and probably in our various organizations. It is something that is definitely on top of our minds. But the question I always have, is it something that is specifically now? Is it a zeitgeist? So is it a buzzword, or is it something that's always been there? And if it is now, is it simply because it is easier to facilitate this with communication between organizations? I imagine that would definitely help collaboration, which might have been much harder to do 20 years ago or 10 years ago, perhaps. But then on the flip side of that, I might also ask whether collaboration isn't perhaps a buzzword for funders rather than necessarily for the organizations involved. So while organizations might benefit from collaboration, which we will discuss, it might also be in a funder's interest to be able to fund multiple organizations in one go. It makes their impact look bigger. And yeah, it might be also slightly more of a catch-all kind of idea. So I wonder if it is a buzzword, and if it is, I don't know if we have data on that, or that's something we can perhaps explore. Definitely, perhaps as part of Africa Data Hub, whether there's more collaboration on the continent. But yeah,
I love that.
It's interesting. Yeah. Blaise, what do you think?
It's so great that it's so great that you come up with so many questions. And I'm interested, Blaise, what do you think? What's your experience been?
I think that collaborations and collaboration, it's both a strategy and a buzzword. And I think to think about internet penetration, ability of technology to I mean, internet is facilitating a lot of things. Technology, mobile phones are facilitating a lot of things today. Unlike before, when we didn't have what we have today, the level of tech, level of smart devices, level of smartphones, applications that allow us to actually all talk together, plan together, monitor events or projects or products at the same time, and collaborate. Use the word collaborate, collaborating tools and technologies. Yes, it's actually both of them, and today it's quite. I can use the word. Let's say it's much advanced than it used to be because of all these technology things I've mentioned. Way back. I mean, you think about us different organizations working from different countries. We won't be able to collaborate. We won't be able to do anything, together. But today, thanks to this technology and tools, we're able to do this thing. So yeah, I think it's two things. It's both of them, and like Dirk rightly said, in the end, beyond technologies, beyond what we're doing together, organizations wants to see. I think these days a lot of funders don't like funding one organization. They feel if they put all the funding in one pot, then, like Drake rightly said, it could be a bigger impact. So yes, I think it's both a buzzword and also a strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great diplomatic answer. But I think you're right. There's elements of truth in both, and we can also talk later about whether collaboration in journalism going forward is is something we need to see more about, because we're obviously talking about collaboration as different partners working on a program together, and the program supporting journalists. But I wonder if we can touch on the idea of collaborating as journalists. But let's talk first about our experience collaborating in our project Africa Data Hub. And then we can come back afterwards. So Dirk, you have been very involved in the development of ADH Resurgence Map, which we now call the COVID Observer, and other ADH data tools. Can you tell us about your experience collaborating with us and other organizations, so across, different organizations virtually, and in how it was difficult or challenging, or there were great opportunities in the production of these tools?
Yeah, I think it's the collaboration, these tools, the building of these tools, or perhaps all the tools that Africa Data Hub has built and so on, has been a collaborative process from the start to the finish. Normally what would happen in the process is that an idea would be brought to the table. This could come from anywhere. So the Resurgence Map was brought to the table by one of our partners, and it was initially called the Risk Map, to kind of measure risk of COVID infection across Africa. And it was through collaboration and through critical engagement by the partners that we perhaps also started questioning the validity of calling it risk, because we started realizing also that, well, risk is a complicated thing, depending on multiple aspects, not just the raw numbers. And so on. So we decided to change it over to a resurgence map to say that COVID infection is increasing or decreasing here, but also later, again, through the collaborative process and also dealing with partners in the project who work in different fields, people like, for instance, Alistair Otto, who's also here in the chat, in the panel, that we could see that the need or the use cases of the tool was not necessarily being engaged with as we had intended, and therefore we could put it up for discussion and we could change how we look at that. And I think there is a key thing, so I would say this collaboration went all the way through. From the start, there's an initial idea, and then you kind of bring on who can bring what to the table. So perhaps Open Cities Lab works with the data on this, OpenUp might work on the development side on this, and then someone else might work on the journalistic or the writing side or the education side around the tools. And everybody brings their bit to the table. But what we kind of also realized, and is an ongoing learning curve for us all in working together, is that we don't all have the same idea of what an end product might look like. So because we might come to the table with an idea, we have an idea of what that might be, but partners, or when we all kind of sanity check it together and we sanity check each other, we might find that actually we all have different ideas of what it might be. But then what we might find is that there are common ground at initial steps along the way. So maybe make the end product something slightly smaller, dream a bit smaller, but something that more people can find useful, and it reaches more of a common ground between partners and between collaborators rather than one specific goal.
That's excellent. Thanks, Dirk. That's really worth highlighting, the points of connection and how there was collaboration all the way through, but people were delegated things to do to contribute, and having certain checkpoints or points to connect and to review was really useful. I know, Alistair's in the group, and he was part of the excellent feedback that helped pivot the process. Can you tell us a little bit more about those processes and the time span? Because this is it was a big tool that you developed.
Yeah.
You might have been working on your own for quite a while, and I'd like to hear more about that.
I think it's when we talk about collaboration in an inter-organizational way, I think it is what we kind of expect or understand, and I think it's sort of an unsaid understanding. It's sort of, we all understand that that we kind of silo our work. So we might discuss something, come together, ideate something, and then we go off and we work on it. So something like the resurgence map, which eventually became the COVID Observer, is something that I then went and sat with after the initial discussions between all partners or a subgroup of the partners who were involved with this. I would go and build it, perhaps with a smaller subgroup of someone working with the data side of it, myself doing the development. But then at many points throughout this process, I think there would be check-ins, and those check-ins, I think that is the essential thing. The only way that it can, almost any collaboration can work between organizations is if you have this regular check-in. So the essential thing, there would be obviously some sort of process. So we would, on a sprintly basis, in sort of an agile format, in a sprintly basis, say, okay, in this sprint, we are trying to deliver this. And then at the end of the sprint, we would be able to review that and say, have we done that? And then partners could also give feedback on what has been delivered. And at that point, we are basically doing a sanity check and seeing, does this kind of meet people's demands? The tricky thing, I think, is that as different organizations and as a fairly big project, people are also pulled in various directions, and people's focus are on different parts of the project, and of course of projects outside of a collaborative project. So sometimes you might not get the feedback at the time when it is required, and it might come in later or something. But I think in generally what we have tried to do in ADH is to kind of keep this feedback loop going, and to try and correct and build when change and pivot potentially when we see the need to do so.
Thanks, Dirk. It's such an important aspect of our collaboration is the process and the communication and feeding back and checking in, like you say. I know the same has been true for you, Blaise. We had lots of ambitions to do certain work with certain newsrooms in Nigeria, and we had to pivot at some point. And we couldn't have known to pivot if it wasn't for the feedback that we received from you, or for you trying and saying it's not working, and then having to come back and say, let's do something different. Can you give us a little bit of background as to your experience, Blaise, in working with newsrooms? How we started working with newsrooms, and then how we decided to change, and the ideas that you came up with to reach journalists instead.
Thanks, Abby. Thanks, Abby. So for me, one thing I've understood about collaborations and working with different organizations or even people is everyone has their own pace. They have their own pace that they want to go. They have their own ideas, respective the way they see things. They have policies that guide the way they do things. And so one bucket cannot fit each of them or all of them at the same time or in the same way. And so one thing I found out that always works is value, showing value upfront. In my experience, I mean, everyone is busy. Every organization is doing great things, and there's always a seeming. We are that seeming. What I call it. What do I use? Let's assumption that everyone is doing fantastic. Okay, and then of course it's fantastic. Everyone is doing fantastic until they tell you, oh, okay, we're not doing fantastic, but yeah, we need what you are offering. And as such, for me, my approach to most people is to show value first. It's at the beginning of my organization, what we tried to do first was to show the value of the data. What in all this data circulating, what can be done with it. And so at the first year of the ADH project, we struggle because of these things I mentioned, which is the pace, the policy, and the way of doing things for a lot of different cultures. And so there are organizations who, if you approach them with, I think something someone told me, she said, if you approach us with a long agreement, we will treat it as such. It will be a long agreement, and it's going to take time because we're going to send it to the legal department, right? And that is something we saw at a point in time. And so my approach is to show you the value. And for me, things like who owns what or rights and all that, for me at the first beginning does not matter, because it's the solutions that I try to focus on. Okay, what can be done with what we have? What is the capacity that you do not have? What is the gap that we want to fill for you? Let's identify that. And what do you agree that what we have is a good enough solution for you? Then from there, when we've come to that agreement, then I think that most of the time, even if I decide to do an agreement, I do not do more than a 2-page agreement, because if you do anything more than that, most definitely they will send it to the legal department, and that's going to take you and now maybe 1 month, 2 months or thereabout of time or money being spent and not doing anything. And so in the second stage of the project, I thought, you know what, as an inlay or in way to the bellies of these newsrooms, let's even show them what is obtainable. Let's even show them what is doable. And so I thought about starting up with a fellowship. Why not? I mean, right now we've had about for every time we launch a fellowship call, we get over 100 um over 100 applications. And I mean, give or take, that's roughly 90 something newsrooms, different newsrooms applying, or newsroom representatives applying, if you look at it that way. And then the second cohort, we got about 115 as well, thereabout. We're going to have a top cohort in November, into December and January. And most definitely is also going to be 100. And so thinking about it, I automatically have like 300, or let's say 200, let's say give or take, if multiple persons were applying from the same newsroom, let's say over 200 newsrooms that I can actually reach out to say, you know what, I have something, and based on the things that I have done with this X number of people, we want to work with you. Now think about the fellows that we are currently working with. I believe that at the end of it, I can tell to these fellows, you know what, go back to your newsrooms, tell them that we want to train 10 people each from every of these newsrooms, because we have given you a fellowship. We worked with you this past few months to deliver this amazing project. Now, what do you think about it? I believe that will be there'll be a good reception to what we're trying to offer. So that's my approach to some of these collaborations. Thank you.
Amazing, Blaise. I think you touched on quite a few cool ideas there. And maybe just for context for other people that are listening, at the Africa Data Hub, we're doing quite a few things. We're offering fellowships and training, which Blaise was talking about, the fellowship with the Africa Data Community Journalism Fellowship, and Sarah's just dropped the link in the chat. There's also training online, and there's also these data resources and tools like the COVID Observer that Dirk showed us earlier and was talking about earlier. So what I loved about what you said is that, and what it highlights what Dirk was saying, is that we all bring individual skills and value to the table, and we're trying to work within those skill sets and within that value and within our different contexts. So Blaise, you're director at Orodata in Nigeria and have a unique understanding of context in Nigeria and the relationship with newsrooms. So it's really interesting saying how you can set the stage and the tone and the pace of engagement, collaboration, just by the nature of the kind of documentation you put forward. So if you do want a long agreement, it's gonna take time. That's interesting. And there's no doubt you have put value first and demonstrated value as your strategy in this collaboration. That's really great. Thank you. We're still waiting for Wende to join. She was having connections issues, but she was going to represent another of our partners, Adipadev in Kenya, who have done similar but different fellowship in Kenya for Kenyan journalists. And it was so great when we discussed this opportunity. It wasn't initially on the cards, but when Blaise, when you brought up the idea of fellowships and the value it can add, our colleagues at Adipadev were very keen to do the same, but obviously adapted for the Kenyan journalists and in the Kenyan context. So that was a really great outcome of that collaboration. I'm really grateful that we were able to share those ideas and make room for those ideas to come through. So that leads me to the next question I was going to pose you, Blaise, about having a healthy tension between differences. And at OCL, we're always talking about having a healthy tension between different people in our organizations and different domains, because there's this necessary tension between different ideas, approaches, and ways of doing things. We find it helps, unpack and strip apart why we should do one thing versus another thing. But Blaise, do you agree that a healthy tension has been pulled through into the Africa Data Hub? Do you think we, as a collective, have made space for for collaborators like yourselves to have different ideas and approaches? And then has this helped, or should we have avoided conflict and different ideas at all costs? Oh, we lost Blaise. He's back.
Yes.
Great. Did you hear my question to you?
No, I didn't. Please, can you rephrase? So sorry.
Do you think that at Africa Data Hub we made enough space for different ideas to come through and for us to nurture like healthy tension, or did we avoid conflict at all costs?
I think that is the first one. I think it's just a bunch of it's a group of people with different cultures, different ways of doing things and learning. And of course, it's expected that at the inception, there'll always be conflict from time to time. But then again, it's why we all come together, and it's why we are all learning, because we can't all agree with each other overnight. That's not possible. Yeah. And we can all have the same way of doing things overnight as well. And so, like we always say, there's always a time. There always, when there's a group of people, there should always be those who are saying yes, and also those who are saying no. That's what makes the whole pot of soup, boil properly. So I think that is the first one. But eventually, it's something that can always be built upon.
Thanks, Blaise. Thank you, Blaise. I think the element of time and it taking time to get to know each other and to learn how each other work is also quite a key element that we were talking about the other day. Dirk, do you remember we were saying how it's important to build trust? Do you have any ideas of what actually builds trust and maybe examples from our experience? You're mute still, Dirk. Sorry, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I was saying no. Definitely, I don't have any ideas on trust. No, I was going to say that in Africa Data Hub, obviously the thing is that the clue is in the title. So it is a continent. It's a project based in Africa. It's not a country-based project, and so collaboration in a project like this is essential. We need people like Blaise, people like Mwende. We need all to come together because we all have expertise or have contact or just a contextual knowledge of a country that we can't all have. So it is essential to be able to collaborate. A project like this won't work without multi-country, multi-organizational collaboration. But therefore, also it is important to also trust. Because we cannot all understand the contextual, the context of every country or of every section that an organization might be working in. We have to also trust that the information that's brought to the table, and we trust the partner organizations and everyone to be experts and to be knowledgeable in their fields and to essentially bring that to the table. And I think in this project, we've been lucky that is the case. I don't know if that is always the case. In terms of specifically also, if we're talking perhaps in the context of NGOs, or if we talk about any meaningful impact, so where we're talking about change, I think it also makes sense that we want to collaborate because it's important to try and build existing structures and existing solutions rather than trying to, you don't want to go start a whole new health NGO, if there are existing structures in place, you'd rather want to kind of help and contribute to existing projects that actually make a far bigger contribution and impact than each one doing their own thing. So in this case, and again, I think it comes down to the issue of trust, that you partner with and you collaborate with partners that you believe and that you know have certain context, information, and abilities, or or skill sets that you might not have in your organization, or might be different, or just different context, and therefore you trust that that will bring ultimately more to a project. Yeah, that collaboration.
Yeah, that's critical. I mean, Africa Data Hub could not have produced nearly a tenth of what it has done if only one of our organizations had been responsible for it, you know. MediaHack produced a really impactful vaccine tracker, which was a huge contribution, and we could never have done it ourselves without them. So that was an excellent contribution. And we were put together and trusting that each other were bringing such skills. So that's really a good point to bring up. Do you think then, and maybe this is a question to Blaise, do you think, I'm talking about like the operations and the experience of us actually doing collaboration, not just the ideas of collaboration, but the doing of collaboration. Do you think it helps to know the individual roles and responsibilities of different partners? So the expectation on certain partners to have local context, or to have relations with certain newsrooms, or to have skills in data science. Do you think that it's important that those roles and responsibilities being clear help with collaboration?
Well, the answer is yes, because I mean, everything we do is project based, and projects, be it project, be it a product, everything to achieve these things are things that can be broken down in different pieces. And so if you think about it in products wise, then to deliver a product, you see, you probably need a marketing person, you need a product owner, you need a designer, you need a software person, and you probably need a scrum master. And then these are different persons or different elements that if one is missing, then the product might not get to its endpoint or its finalization. So I think that it's important that these things are clearly spelled out, so that each organization, each person knows what or who is responsible for delivering at any element at any stage, and then of course going for that. I think it's very, very, very important because, like I said, rightfully, without one of it, then there's always something big that's going to be missing. So yes, it's very important that that is known and established.
Our roles
And then with that in
responsibilities
mind,
in our collaboration were clear from the start. Sorry, go ahead, Dirk.
No, sorry, I jumped in there as well. I suppose I think that is the question there is, I agree 100% with Blaise. I think it's the question I just had was, how does that work when there is overlap in a lot of roles in an organization or between organizations? It is hard. Within organizations, perhaps easy, but between organizations, it's sometimes tricky when there's that overlap of roles. Is it better to have partners collaborate with diverse organizations, or sometimes, is it okay if people do the same thing?
Okay, I agree. That's quite a tough one because I think it's neither here nor there, because it's okay to do. I mean, if organizations do the same thing, because in the end they learn from each other. Then again, I can always say you're so different if what one organization has, the other does not also have. That way, they can always complement each other. I think it's just, in the end, you can't really bat out one of them. You just go with the flow. I mean, think about our current disposition, Africa Data Hub. We at Orodata, we do tons of things around data, And I believe Udipo Dev as well does a lot of things around data as well. But then there are places where we see that there are things that we have and they don't have, or things that they have and we don't have. So, and that's where, so in the end, if out of 10 technicalities, the organization might have maybe 7 or 6, then there's also some other things that they don't have in common, and that's what you need to count on. So like I said, I'm neither here nor there. I'm not leaning on any side. I'm just in between it.
That's excellent. Thank you, Blaise. It's a question that came up before, like the limits of collaboration. So, or the scale of collaboration. Does that matter? Does it matter how big a program is? Does it matter how much time you have to collaborate? Because it's all very well that we've had 2 years to like build trust, communicate, learn, and implement processes. Some organizations or some projects may not have that time. Do you think that collaborations are going to be more successful if they have more time, or if there's a limit that you should have one objective and do it in small projects? What do you think the boundaries of collaboration are?
Is that for me or Dirk?
Go ahead, Blaise.
Okay, I mean, really, I don't think there should be boundaries. I think I don't think there should be a limit as well, because in the end, like I said, there's something about culture and the way of doing things, and different organizations have different ways of doing things. I mean, you could match 2 organizations and they could get started quickly and deliver quickly, or you can match it different 2 entirely, and they kind of maybe need some time to get in it. So what we can never really counter or really factor is the different cultures of these different entities or different ways of doing things. I mean, this was something we'd never even planned. I mean, think about when we're trying to partner with the newsrooms. In our head, we thought, okay, you know what, we could get this agreements done and dusted in a month. But man, you know how long it took us, and eventually until we gave up for some of them. But we just thought, okay, 1 month could do it for us. So 1 month was our limit. But down the line, we didn't see that this was going to happen, or this was a structure or policies or way of doing things or culture that the organization already had in place. And so if you send them this document, they have a due process that we did not factor how long that would take. So this is something we cannot factor. Like I said, for organizations willing to, because I mean, being the having worked with newsrooms for a while, I wouldn't say long time, but yeah, for a while, I kind of understood a few things, which is I try to cut through the red tapes. I'm always thinking, what do I need to do to make sure that I cut through this red tape? I don't have to waste time. And so that's what comes into my mind. So when there is a bit of, okay, some technical agreement, I want to know, how do I go around this argument? But then it's because of the way I built my organization. For a lot of people, I want to use, rather than use the term traditional, let me not use old. That due process will be that due process. And that's what, if I was, say, one of the heads of the newsrooms that, what do you call it, that we were struggling to partner with, what I would just said is, what do these guys want to do? And what are the key things in that we want to take, in that agreement we want to take everything else and let's get on with it. That was what I would have done. But then different people have different ways of doing things, and we can never factor that in any collaboration. We can never factor that in any partnership. And so in the end, I just feel that it should be limitless, and there should be no time stamp on it.
You speak like a true fan of agile processes, and that resonates so closely with me. I wonder, Dirk, do you agree?
Yeah, I think, as I think I mentioned before, as well, I think that is essentially the only thing that allows it to work and allows is to have a process in place, and it's the checks and balances. And I suppose we don't have to limit what we aim for, as long as one can check all along the way that you are getting somewhere. So, and I mean, I think the question always is also, I mean, are there too many people? Are there too many organizations in a specific project? When does collaboration become counterproductive? I think there have been cases, even in our project, especially in trying to find our feet in who does what and how different organizations work, that perhaps we have, if it was a single organization, one might have been able to push it out earlier, but there's more people that have to obviously agree on stuff. But ultimately, hopefully that would mean that your end product is better, as there's the more eyes and more ears you have on something, inevitably tends to sometimes hopefully make it better. But I think the essential thing is to have that process. But I think you will get to a point where you probably have diminishing returns the more people you start adding on to a collaborative project. So I think at some point you probably have to go, okay, this is probably enough now. We've got, we can't have 400 organizations, or you can, but you will have a very tired project manager. I think
Sarah, are you very tired?
I think it's just the process is essential, and if everyone can buy into a process, and I think it's worked sort of in Africa Data Hub fairly well, because there is a commonality between all the organizations in working along this sort of agile process, and definitely on a sprintly basis, and using tools like retrospectives and even just the digital tools, the what we use to assign tasks, and those things are kind of essential to get everyone on the same page. Otherwise, I think one would get nowhere. And I suppose that is why it's a buzzword today and not 10 years ago, because those tools and things just didn't really exist back then.
Yeah. Well, for the audience's benefit, we use Slack to communicate and chat and repeat messages if we lose them, because email just messages and strings and threads get so lost in email. So we use Slack for general communications. We use Trello to manage project-related work. And we've all come on board with the kind of etiquette and process and the ways we use those channels to work as a team. So you're right, those digital platforms and tools are helpful. I myself have had to improve my use of Trello and be quick to respond on Slack. But then also not to forget about email. So yeah, that's a good point. I'm just going to look through what we've spoken about already today. We've spoken about process being critical in establishing checkpoints and the, it's not just collaboration to say we're collaborating. We actually do collaborate. We come together when there's ideas. We come together when there's things to review. We come together when there's feedback and we need to pivot and change. So there have been lots of points of collaboration actively due to process and structure of our consortium. We've also spoken about building trust and allowing a time to present our value and find where we can plug a gap, offer value. That's quite critical, because you can plan, but only when you can demonstrate value, then can you gain momentum in a collaboration. We've also spoken about resting on people's skills and contextual advantages, and bringing your value to the table has been helpful. We haven't spoken about any of the challenges, really. We've been very polite. We haven't spoken about how many times we did have to rethink and change our ways of doing things, because collaboration is challenging. It can take, like you were saying, Dirk, it can take a long time to get something out. It would have been much quicker if we just did it on our own. And it can take a lot longer when you're waiting for someone else to review something, or, when there's too many cooks in the, stirring the broth. It can take so much longer. And we've had to refine processes and refine roles and responsibilities because of that. And even how regular our communication is. Something we haven't spoken about is we used to meet every 2 weeks as a whole organization, but our whole consortium organizations can be up to 40 to 50 people. And maybe if we had just representatives, it would be down to at best 12 to 20 people. So that's a lot of people. And your question about what's counterproductive and what's productive in terms of volume or scale is a good one. And I don't think we have the answer. We've had to change the way we communicate. Yeah, have any of you got any comments on how we communicate and what's worked and what hasn't worked?
Blaise?
Dirk, I was gonna ask you to talk, but that's fine. I'm gonna go.
This is great communication. Yeah, no, it's exactly what I said. I think as into organizations, it's that I think we're pretty good at this. I think the ADH project has done well. In those channels are open, and it also allowing people to, I think it was mentioned yesterday in a discussion we had this, but where people can also, it's not about one organization talking to another organization, but it's also individuals within the organizations talking to each other. And that also not only builds friendships, but also another avenue for ideas, etc., that might not even be related to the project at hand. I was going to say that I think almost just with this idea of collaboration, I wonder if collaboration, it's specifically in our space, which is essentially an idea space. So we're working journalism, we're working with data. It's a space of ideas where I think almost collaboration is essential because, well, we can't have, it's better to have more ideas and more input on those things. But perhaps collaboration is less essential when you have a specific, for instance, a health NGO that does a single-focused health NGO, where the impact is actually on the ground, where the certain educational things are met, or whatever it might be, or a housing NGO, etc. But when we're dealing in something kind of abstract like an idea space, then I think in that way collaboration is essential, especially in an intercontinental kind of way like this.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Dirk. There might be situations that collaboration isn't impactful, but in ours, I agree that it's an idea space and digital, that it lends itself to, continental collaboration. We have an interesting point from Harvey in our Q&A. Said, good afternoon all. As a previous product manager, I have a bias towards the product management approach. One person with cross-organizational knowledge, coordinating and communicating across silos. And I think that is a place we tend to find ourselves in. I know that Sarah, our project lead, has played that kind of a role, being across organizations, and we have numerous times mentioned we don't want to end up in silos. But I wonder if I can ask Blaise to comment here. Do you think that there's room to operate as silos, or do you think that our product management, even though it takes a little bit longer, has been more beneficial as a collaborative organization or consortium?
Okay. So are we talking about just the Africa, everything we've done as Africa Hub itself? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's been quite a few products that have come out of Africa Data Hub where we have worked in silos, and there have been products that have come out of Africa Data Hub when we have worked together. Are there any that you can talk about that, just mention if they are a good outcome or a challenge for collaboration?
So I think that the way my mind always works is I'm always a very flexible person. The way I think about things, and be it general or be it in a silo, I think that it depends on the timeline for the project, and it also depends on what needs to be done. I mean, in-house, beyond the, what do we call it? Beyond the general project, ADH project as well. In-house, Orodata built its own vaccine tracker at a point in time. and that we did in a silo. And for us, we did that because we needed to move very fast, and we were already out of time based on deliverables, and we figured this would be something that could be a good enough deliverable. And at that point in time, I thought, I mean, if I decide to extend this to the entire ADH team, then there'll be a bunch of emails, a bunch of back and forth, and bunch of. I figured in house we could get this, and then ship it, and that's that. So again, like I said, that was because of the situation that we found ourselves in at a point in time. There are other projects where we need not work that way, which is some of the other projects that we've done. So as well, again, I think that in the end, it depends on the situation, and it depends on the project involved. I think for me, it's always about flexibility. What best suits that situation, and then you apply it to get things done.
Thanks, Blaise. It's a really honest answer. The vaccine tracker that you developed for Nigeria at a sub-national level was produced entirely by yourselves at Orodata. And you're right, it happened in a very short space of time. And you could say that that's us acting in silos. There were other products also produced by other partners that happened in silos. And maybe that worked for those products. So I like that comment about flexibility. We certainly haven't got all the answers and are learning from our processes. So thanks, Blaise. Dirk, do you have a comment there? We have about 3 minutes left, so I'd love to hear your
I don't have
thoughts.
anything to add to that. I think it is just that as long as there is a shared vision, and I think then one can work towards something. But if that is missing, then I think one will always have issues, and all these things will crop up more.
Thank you. That's an excellent point for us to wrap up our panel discussion and to affirm that as ADH we've done that well. We have rallied around a common vision, and we've managed to get buy-in from all our partners and even the newsrooms we've partnered with, that lowering the barriers to improving data journalism in Africa is simply our common mission. Blaise, any last thoughts before we close?
Oh well, really, I think we've covered everything else. So no last. Thank you.
Thank you, Blaise. I'm sad we weren't joined by Mwende, but I hope we've covered some of her input that we had from before. So just in closing, I'd like to advertise the next session. I think the poster will come up shortly. We invite you to join us at 10:30 p.m. Central African time. That can't be right. Oh, tomorrow. What time does it say? 10:30 a.m. On this ME platform for a discussion about solutions journalism in Africa. We also, as Africa Data Hub, have a training on solutions journalism if you're interested in it, and produced by the Solutions Journalism Network. It's really great. You should check it out. And yeah, also one last thing is subscribe to the Jamlab Africa newsletter to keep up to date with Jamlab Africa news, and subscribe, which, yeah, you'll see there now. It's in the chat. And that's it from our side. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Blaise and Dirk, for your contributions, and
Thanks, Abigail.
for our listeners, and for the comments we received. So from myself, Abigail Kemper, and also from the Jamlab Africa team, thank you and keep well.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Dirk. Bye.
Thanks.